Welcome back, everyone. So PPP forgiveness has changed. You've heard about it, but what does this mean for your business? Is it really going to help, or did they just make it worse? And if it is better, how will it help you? And that's what we're going to talk about in this video. So for those of you who don't know, I'm Doug Burson, I'm a CPA, and I focus on helping small businesses just like yours. Chances are, if you're watching this video, there's a good chance we can help. And if you've been finding value in our coverage on the COVID crisis, please subscribe. This is sure to just be another change in a string of minis. You're going to see they're even talking about in this expecting more change. So stay tuned. And I would love to hear, because I haven't asked this yet, I would love to hear how a lot of you have had the PPP program help your business. So leave comments below. Show us maybe some of how it's helped you, or maybe some of the concerns you still have, because I can promise if you have some questions, a lot of other people do, and they just haven't asked. And we're really doing our best to try to answer as many of those as we can. So leave those below. But let's dive right in. So first of all, this is going to be good for most of you. It really is. Great changes. There are things that we've been concerned about, because so many of our clients are like, Doug, I can't even open. How am I supposed to use this money? It's not fair that my 8-week period is up, and they said I can't even work. So they've made some great changes there that are going to help a lot of you. And with that, let's go ahead and get started. So the following that I'm going to go through, and I'm going to read a lot this time, but the following, it's a summary of legislation as it's compiled by the AICPA. So they've done a really good job of really summarizing this and making it quick and to the point, and I think that's what you really want. You want quick answers that you can use. So let's go ahead and do that. So the current PPP borrowers, so those of you who've already gotten the loan, you can now choose to extend your 8-week period to 24 weeks. That's 3 times the amount of time we had before, and that's huge. Now you can also, let's say you've used up all your money and you just want to be done with this, you can choose to still use the 8-week period if you already have a loan. If you get your loan after this is signed into law, and it's critical, I want to cover that. This thing is not law yet, but we expect it to be signed. But as with everything in this whole series that we've been talking about, this stuff is changing so rapidly. Anything I say in this video, it's as of right now and as of the way we understand it. And as things change, we're trying to keep you up to date. So once again, subscribe and we'll take care of that. But if you're a new borrower, so you got your loan after this is signed, so say next week, you will have 24 weeks from the start. You don't have the option of the 8. I don't know why you'd want that anyway, just off the top of my head, but you're going to have 24 weeks. But the period can't extend beyond December 31st. I don't think that's going to be an issue, because even though it's not there, they've already said they're going to add the fact that you can't apply for the loan after June 30th. So I don't think that's really going to be an issue for any of us. But it's just good to know that is the drop dead date, is December 31. Anything spent after that, nobody's going to be able to use. Now, the important part with this is by going to 24 weeks, most of you who've been really concerned about how we're going to allocate this and how we're going to get this spent and make sure we're going to be forgiven, you can take a breath. You can take a sigh of relief that we're going to be okay and we can spend money the way we should have. And if you remember, if you watched my prior series, I said all along, make smart business decisions. If we've done that and we still had a lot of it that we couldn't spend, we still have it now and we can use it to keep our business going. So hopefully you guys took that advice and you're in great shape. Now, that was the big one, but they also made a change to the 75%. And if you've been watching our other videos, the 75%, we had to use a maximum of 25% of it for things like utilities, mortgage interest, rent. That's all we could use. And then we could use up to 75% for payroll. But there's been a key change here. That 75 has now been dropped to 60. So that's good on a couple levels. One, we only have to do 60% in payroll, but that means that we have the up to 40% for things such as rent, utilities, and mortgage interest. And that changes it a lot, especially for a lot of you who maybe were closed, but you still had the responsibility to pay the rent and the utilities on your business. You now can allocate up to 40%. And I think with 24 weeks, almost all of you should be able to get this thing forgiven now. And that's a big deal. But there's one part of this is that the 60% is now a cliff. And what that means is that if you don't use at least 60% of the money for payroll, you just failed and it's not forgiven. Now, I don't think that's what they intended to do, but sometimes when they write laws rapidly, they make errors. There's been discussions that they're going to try to correct that, but for now, and that's all we know is for now, we have to spend 60% on payroll. But don't panic. Remember, we have 24 weeks to show that we spent this amount of money on payroll, so we should be just fine. So don't worry about that, but know it's there and stay tuned. We'll let you know if that cliff changes. But for now, that's a big deal. And actually, on that, it says here in the AICPA thing here that Representative Chip Roy of Texas, who co-sponsored the bill, said that the bill intended the sliding scale to remain in effect at 60%, and Senators Marco Rubio and Susan Collins indicated that technical tweaks could be made to the bill to restore the sliding scale. So in other words, what I just said, they're probably going to fix that so that 60% is not a cliff, but for now it is, so just be aware of it. Well, not yet, because the bill hasn't passed, just to reiterate that, but we think it will. Once that bill passes, we do have a cliff, so once again, be aware. Now, another thing that they've done is that they said borrowers can use the 24-week period to restore their workforce levels and wages to the pre-pandemic levels, blah, blah, blah. And the change from the previous deadline of June 30th. So what does that mean? Well, those of you who haven't watched it yet, go watch this video right here. It's on the full-time equivalents, and that'll explain what this is about. But the simple part of this is we had to have our full-time equivalents back up by June 30th. And simplistically, that means how many people we had working for us has to be back up to that level in order for this loan to be fully forgiven. And it's a pretty big ding if it's not. This is a big break for a lot of you who've been closed or whose revenue's just not back up yet as we're trying to work through this. You now have until December 31st to get your full-time equivalents back up and not get dinged on your forgiveness. And that could be huge, especially for a lot of my restaurant and bar clients. This could be a big deal. And I know a lot of you other businesses have been affected the same way in certain parts of the country and in certain industries. So this is a big break for a lot of you, and I want you to understand that's how it works. But go check out that other video. It'll explain the easy way to calculate this with a simplified method. But know we now have until December 31st to get it fixed instead of June 30th. And that's going to be a big deal. Now, once again, if this doesn't pass, we'll come back and talk about it, but I just don't see it not. So we're going to go ahead and talk like it is. Now, there's also two major exceptions that they brought out in this bill to allow borrowers to achieve full PPP loan forgiveness even if they can't restore their workforce. And the previous guidance already allowed borrowers if the employee turned down a good faith effort. And we've talked about that before. But the new bill allows us to adjust because they couldn't find qualified employees. And that's a completely different verbiage. And so, or they can't find qualified employees, or they were not able to restore business operations to February 15 of 2020 levels. Now, how are we going to prove that? How's that all going to work out? Well, I'm sure we'll be covering that more later as they get into the details. But that's a big twist, and that could help some of us that our businesses just got hammered, and it's not it's not what we want. We want to reopen, but things just have been really tough for us. Well, the last thing we need is to have them just twist the screw on us too. This is going to give us some relief there. So hopefully that's not you, but if it is, know there is something there, and more will come out as this gets fleshed out, and we'll cover that more in future videos, I'm sure. And another part that I really don't think many of you are going to have to worry about this, but there will be some, of course. But remember, we had 2 years to pay this back at 1%. Well, they've now stretched it to 5 years. And I have some friends in the banking industry. I know they're not going to be happy about this because they're not making money on these loans, but it's going to be stretched to 5 years. and still at 1%. So if things did go sideways and you really couldn't use it, the lead weight of this payment is going to be stretched over 5 and be a lot easier for you to handle while you're still trying to recover and save your business. So for some of you, that's going to be a big relief. Hopefully not many of you are going to be affected this way, because remember, we now have 24 weeks, not the 8 that we were all sweating over. We now have 24. So really, unless we have a big flare-up again, I pray we don't, but if we do, then I guess things could change. But for most of us, we really should be able to get this fully forgiven, as long as, go back to some of my prior videos, good records. That didn't go away. We still have to have good records. We still got to have documentation. We're still going to need payroll reports. We're still going to need to be tracking to make sure that we're meeting the thresholds. So don't let 24 weeks cause you to be lazy and make dumb decisions and not take care of your records, because 24 weeks won't fix bad records. And I think we need to make sure that you understand that. Records, records, records. Give your banker a reason to say this looks good. Don't give them a reason to say, who is this guy? Let's do it right. And if you need help, find an accountant, maybe us, maybe somebody else, but make sure you take care of this. And one last thing that was changed, and the bill allows businesses that took a PPP loan, try saying that thing all the stinking time, PPP loan, but those of you who have taken that loan, you can now delay payment of payroll taxes, which was prohibited in the CARES Act. And I'm going to say right now, don't do it. I mean, yeah, it says we can, but I don't know how many times I've seen businesses get in trouble for delaying payroll taxes and then begin a snowball that they have a really, really hard time ever digging out of, and it just creates bad habits and bad patterns. So I understand if you have to, and maybe that's what you're going to have to do, but try not to. It's just a path I don't want to see people go down unless it's just absolutely necessary, because you're going to have to pay it back anyway. So let's just not start that habit. So there it is. I mean, it's essentially law. It's passed House, it's passed Senate. I haven't heard anything that indicates that the president's not going to sign it, because he wants to get relief out there too. And so I think this is going to be good for us. I think you're going to find it really eases the stress on this deal. You're going to have forgiveness, and we're going to be there for you if you need us. Go ahead, once again, subscribe. Stay tuned. We're going to bring out more as this becomes clear. We'll go over some calculators, because I covered a calculator a few weeks back, but obviously the calculator's now changed, and so we'll go over how to calculate it, maybe talk more about records, and other than that, I'm excited about it. I hope you guys are too, and it helps you all rest better. And so until next time, have a wonderful weekend.